Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're uncorking a really fascinating story. It's about the Spanish white grape, Godello.
That's right. A grape that's really, well, having a moment, especially over in Atlantic Spain.
Exactly. And we've gathered some, great insights. We want to give you, our listener, a sort of shortcut to understanding what makes Godello tick.
hmm We're aiming to go beyond just a basic intro. We'll look at its history, its character, and why wine folks are getting so excited about it.
We've basically distilled info from a detailed article simply called Godello. It covers everything: history, terroir, taste.
And we've also pulled in analysis from a sommelier who clearly knows their stuff when it comes to this grape.
So our mission today, to really unpack the journey of Godello, from almost being forgotten to, well, becoming this rising star.
And highlight what makes his wine so distinctive, so interesting.
Okay, so let's start there. What is fueling this buzz around Godello? Is it just hype or something more?
Well, I think there's a growing recognition of its actual inherent quality, its
Hmm.
potential, especially among people who really follow wine.
Right.
The sommelier source we looked at clearly has massive respect for it, sees it as capable of producing genuinely top-tier white wines, something special.
Special how, though? What are the defining features of a really good Godello?
You're looking at complexity, for one. Complex aromas, often a really elegant texture on the palate,
Mm-hmm.
and surprisingly, perhaps, it can age really well. It develops over time.
So this isn't just a quick drink it young kind of white.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
And a lot of its growing reputation comes down to dedicated producers,
Hmm.
people who saw its potential when it maybe wasn't so fashionable.
Okay, so there's real substance. What about the basics? Acidity, body.
That's key. It strikes this fantastic balance. You get this vibrant, refreshing acidity, but the body can vary. Sometimes lighter, sometimes surprisingly full. Depends on the winemaking.
And if I have a glass in front of me, what am I smelling? What am I tasting? Give us the clues.
Okay, aromatically, often white fruits. Think apple, maybe pear. Stone fruits too, like peach.
Nice.
You might get delicate floral notes,
Yeah.
jasmine, orange blossom, that sort of thing. Sometimes a little hint of green, like herbs.
Mm-hmm.
And often, this is really characteristic, a distinct minerality. It really speaks of where it's grown.
Minerality, everyone talks about it. What does that actually mean in the glass? Like crushed rocks, wet stones.
Yeah, exactly like that. It can be like flint or whetstone, sometimes even a touch salty. It adds this layer, beyond just fruit,
Hmm.
connects it to the ground.
Interesting. And texture.
Often described as unctuous, silky even. Gives it a nice mouthfeel, adds another dimension.
Sounds like it could really show off where it comes from, the terroir.
Absolutely. It's known for expressing terroir really well. The specific vineyard site can really shine through.
Okay.
And here's something interesting. It actually takes well to oak aging, which isn't always the case for Spanish whites.
Oak. Right. You don't always associate that with, say, Albariño. What does oak do for Godello?
Well, when it's done right, it can add structure, a sort of creaminess, subtle spice notes, maybe vanilla, toast,
Mm-hmm.
and it helps with that aging potential we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Bottle aging is definitely a thing for Godello. It can develop these really sophisticated notes over time, dried fruits, nutty hints.
So it's complex and it can age. No wonder it's getting noticed.
Exactly. From casual drinkers exploring something new, right up to top sommeliers and critics. You see it more and more on good wine lists in specialty shops.
So it's really carving out its niche on the world stage.
I think so, yeah. It's being seen as a really serious white grape from Spain,
Hmm.
one that can compete with the big international names,
Hmm.
the media attention, the awards. It's all building its reputation globally.
Which makes you wonder, where did it come from? What's its backstory?
Yeah, let's get into that, the history.
It's a great story, actually. A real narrative of,
Yeah.
well, resistance against being forgotten, and then this remarkable comeback.
Historical evidence, looking at the vine itself, ampelography, it all points to deep roots in the Iberian Peninsula, specifically Galicia in northwest Spain.
So a true native grape of that area.
Looks like it. There's evidence of it being grown for centuries in places like Valdeorras and Monterey, which are now key DOs, denominations of origin,
Right.
and its adaptation over time to those Galician soils, that Atlantic climate. That's what shaped its unique character.
But it nearly vanished. What happened in the 20th century?
Yeah, like a lot of traditional local grapes across Europe, it really declined in the 20th century. Market preferences changed, you see.
Ah.
There was a big push towards higher yielding varieties. Things like Palomino, which is great for sherry, but maybe doesn't express that Galician terroir in the same way Godello does.
So quantity over specific quality,
In
basically.
a way, yes. A lot of Godello vineyards were just ripped out, replaced. The planted area shrunk dramatically.
Wow.
For a while, its future looked, well, pretty uncertain.
Scary thought. So what turned it around? How did this revival happen?
It really picked up steam in recent decades, driven by a group of really forward-thinking producers, especially in the Valdeorras region.
Visionaries, almost.
You could say that.
Yeah.
They saw the potential, the quality that was being lost, and they invested heavily in bringing it back.
How? What did they actually do?
A lot of careful work,
Yeah.
identifying the best existing vines, propagating superior clones, basically selecting the best genetic material within the Godello family.
That sounds really detailed. Scientific, almost.
It is
Wow.
very precise. And alongside that, they did in-depth studies, understanding how Godello behaves in different soils, different microclimates,
Right?
plus adopting modern techniques in the vineyard and the winery tailored specifically for Godello.
So respecting the past, but using modern knowledge, too.
Exactly that blend. And the success wasn't just in Valdeorras. It started spreading. You see good Godello and Bierzo now, for instance, and maybe the biggest impact. Its success story inspired others in Spain to look again at their own forgotten indigenous grapes.
A real beacon, then.
Absolutely. Godello's story is a perfect example of rescuing a true viticultural treasure. And a huge part of that treasure is the land itself, isn't it? The terroir. How crucial is that for Godello?
Terroir seems absolutely central to Godello. You mentioned its ability to express where it's grown.
It's fundamental. You can't really understand Godello without understanding its connection to place.
Yeah.
That interaction, climate, soil, the shape of the land, it all molds the final wine.
Okay, let's break that down. The climate in Galicia. You said Atlantic influence.
Big time. Cool, wet winters. Summers are mild, not scorching.
Yeah.
And pretty regular rainfall.
Right.
That maritime climate means the grapes ripen slowly, gradually.
And what does that slow ripening do for the wine?
It's key for developing complexity. Those layers of aroma, the fruit, the floral notes, the hints of herbs, they need time to build up. And crucially, that cool climate helps retain acidity, that bright, refreshing quality that makes the wine so lively and helps them age.
Okay, climate's one piece. What about the soil? We hear about schist and granite a lot over there.
They're definitely the main players in places like Valdeorras and Bierzo. Schist soils, they're kind of layered, hold heat. Well, they often give that distinctive minerality. We talk about that flinty wet stone thing.
Right, the minerality again.
Yeah, and maybe a certain depth,
Yeah.
an earthy quality.
And granite, what's its effect?
Granite soils tend to be more acidic, well-draining. They often lead to a slightly lighter, maybe more elegant style of Godello. Really highlights the fruity and floral side. The actual minerals in the soil directly influence the grape chemistry. It's a direct line from the ground to the glass. Fascinating stuff.
It really paints a picture of the land speaking through the wine. What about the landscape itself? Hills, slopes, altitude?
Also really important. The topography creates microclimates.
Mm.
Vineyards on slopes. They often get better sun exposure,
Okay.
which means more even ripening, potentially more concentration of the grapes,
Yeah.
sugars, flavor compounds.
And higher up, altitude matters.
Definitely. Higher vineyards are generally cooler, especially at night. That difference between day and night temperature slows ripening down even more, preserves that vital acidity,
Right.
and often leads to more intense aromas and a more defined structure in the wine.
So you could have two vineyards quite close, but if one's high on a south-facing slope and the other is lower down.
They could produce noticeably different wines. Absolutely. It's all about that specific combination. The slope, the aspect, which way it faces, the sun, the altitude, creates these little nuances.
So the region really defines the wine. A Valdeorras Godello versus one from Monterey.
You'd likely notice differences, yeah.
Ah.
Valdeorras, with its schist and Atlantic influence, often shows more pronounced minerality, maybe a firmer structure, elegant.
Okay.
Monterey, maybe a bit more continental climate influence, mixed soils. You might find more upfront, exuberant fruit, maybe slightly softer acidity.
So terroir isn't just a buzzword here. It really shapes the diversity of styles you find.
It defines their identity, gives you this wonderful spectrum to explore.
It's like the vineyard's fingerprint. Okay, let's zoom in even closer. The vine itself. Ampelography. What does a Godello vine actually look like?
Right, the vine specifics. The leaves are pretty distinctive. Medium size, 5 lobes, kind of pentagonal shape,
Uh-huh.
darker green on top. bit fuzzy underneath. The gaps between the lobes, the sinuses are deep, U-shaped. Same with the stem joins the leaf.
Yeah.
And the edges are kind of serrated.
Got it. And the grapes, the bunches?
Bunches are usually small to medium, cone-shaped, sometimes more cylindrical. They can be quite compact, packed tightly together.
Does that matter? The compactness?
It can, yeah.
Hmm.
In damp weather, it might increase the risk of rot or disease because air can't circulate as well.
Ah, okay. And the berries?
Medium-sized, sort of oval, to go from greenish yellow to this lovely golden color when they're ripe. Skin's not too thick. The pulp inside is juicy, but the flavor itself is fairly simple. It's during ripening that all those complex aroma precursors develop, along with the sugar and acid balance.
And its growing cycle. When does it wake up in spring?
Budburst is typically mid-spring. Then flowering a few weeks later. Good weather during flowering is pretty crucial for getting a decent crop.
Right.
And as we said, it ripens relatively late, mid to late season, which is actually an advantage in that Atlantic climate.
Gives it more times.
Exactly. More time for flavors to develop, sugars to accumulate properly, acidity to mellow slightly, those complex aromas to build, that day-night temperature swing during ripening. Really important for locking in acidity and aroma intensity.
So it likes cool but sunny places, ideally with that temperature variation. Any particular sensitivities?
It seems well adapted to those Atlantic conditions, handles the cool, wet winters, likes the mild summers, needs sun, definitely, but too much heat, it can lose that lovely acidity.
Okay.
And it definitely seems happiest in those well-drained soils, the schist and granite we keep mentioning. They just seem to suit it.
Right, so the grapes are grown, they're ripe, harvest time. What happens next in the winery to turn them into Godello wine?
It's a careful process. Harvesting by hand is quite common. Lets you select the best bunches, be gentle.
Minimize damage.
Exactly. Then at the winery, they'll usually destem the grapes. You don't want those green, stemmy tannins in the wine.
Makes sense. Then straight into the press.
Using a gentle crush first, then a very delicate pressing. Often using pneumatic presses, they're gentle, give you clean juice, good acidity, keeps those primary fruit aromas intact.
Okay.
Some winemakers might do a short skin maceration first, letting the juice sit with the skins for a bit at cool temperatures.
Skin contact for a white. Why do that?
It can pull out more aroma compounds, things like terpenes and esters, boost the aromatic intensity, potentially add a bit of texture too.
Interesting. Then fermentation.
Typically in stainless steel tanks. Temperature control is vital. Keep it cool, say 15 to 18 degrees Celsius, to preserve all those delicate, fresh aromas.
Right.
If you're aiming for more complexity or fermenting in oak barrels, you might go slightly warmer. But controlling that temperature, absolutely key for freshness.
And after fermentation, aging.
Several options here. For young, fresh styles, stainless steel is standard. Keeps it fruity and crisp.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's aging Surlai. On the fine lees, the dead yeast cells,
What does that do?
adds texture, makes it feel rounder, creamier in the mouth. Can also add complexity, subtle yeasty notes, maybe like toasted bread, becoming quite popular for Godello.
And oak. We keep coming back to oak.
Yes, oak aging is a definite stylistic choice for some. Can add structure, that unctuous feel, complex notes toast, vanilla, spice.
Uh-huh.
Plus, barrels allow tiny amounts of oxygen and microoxygenation, which can help the wine evolve and become more stable. But it's a balancing act. You don't want the oak to dominate the grape's character.
Right. It needs a deft touch.
Absolutely. And then finally, bottle aging. Even after it's released, Godello can continue to develop in the bottle, integrating flavors, gaining those tertiary notes like dried fruit or honey.
So the winemaker has a lot of levers to pull to create different expressions.
Exactly. You get the whole spectrum. Young and zesty, focusing on fruit and minerality. More full-bodied, complex styles with oak and lees aging.
Any other styles?
Sparkling Godello isn't common, but the grape's acidity makes it possible, usually using the traditional method. Dessert wines. Very rare, maybe from late harvest grapes in specific years, but not really its thing.
So the winemaker's role is crucial in interpreting the grapes, the site.
Absolutely. Guiding every step, deciding the style, aiming for quality, and expressing that typicity, that sense of place.
Okay, so after all that care, we finally pour a glass. Let's talk tasting. What defines Godello on the nose and palate?
Well, the best ones are complex, really engaging. They manage to show both the grape's character and where it came from.
Let's start with aromas. What hits your nose first?
Often those appealing white fruits, green apple, pear, maybe softer stone fruits like peach or apricot.
Nice.
Delicate floral notes are common to acacia, orange blossom maybe. Sometimes a subtle green or herbaceous hint like fennel or bay leaf.
Uh-huh.
And that minerality again. Flint, wet stones. Really distinctive. If it's seen oak, you might get hints of almond, maybe dried fruit.
And tasting it, does it follow the nose?
Pretty much, yeah. You get that vibrant acidity, the clean fruit flavors echoing the aromas. Those herbal and mineral notes often come through, too.
Body and texture.
Medium to full-bodied, generally. And often that lovely, unctuous, silky texture we mentioned leads into a nice long finish.
So structurally, it's got that acidity as a backbone.
Key element.
Mm.
Provides freshness, structure, supports the body and texture.
And it's why it can age so well.
How does it change with age in the bottle? What happens to those flavors and aromas?
It gets really interesting. The fresh fruit and floral notes evolve. They become more like dried fruits, apricot, fig. You might get honeyed notes, subtle spices like curry or saffron.
Wow, curry.
Yeah, sometimes those complex spice notes emerge. The minerality integrates, maybe deepens. Some very old examples might even develop a faint petrol note, a bit like aged Riesling.
And the structure?
Acidity softens a bit, integrates. Texture gets perhaps even more velvety. Fresh fruit becomes dried, or candied fruit becomes more complex, more layered. Definitely sounds like a wine worth holding on to sometimes. How do terroir and winemaking specifically shape these sensory details?
Huge influence. Climate gives the acidity, the aroma, building blocks. Schist soils bring that minerality, structure. Granite, really more aromatic lift, freshness. Altitude helps with acidity, fresh aromas.
Right.
Then in the winery, cool fermentation preserves aromas. Skin contact boosts intensity. Lees aging adds texture, complexity. Oak adds structure, spice, aging potential. It's all interconnected.
Nature and nurture working together. Could you give us a quick snapshot of the different styles, young versus lees aged versus oaked?
Sure. Young, stainless steel Godello. Pale color, bright aromas, fresh fruit, floral, maybe herbal, mineral. Dry, crisp acidity, medium body, elegant feel, fruity mineral finish.
Okay.
Surly aged, maybe slightly deeper yellow, more complex nose, riper fruit, yeast notes, herbs, minerals. Acidity feels integrated. Body, medium full, creamy unctuous texture. Longer, more complex finish.
Got it. And oaked.
Deeper golden color usually.
Yep.
Complex nose, again, ripe fruit, minerals, plus toast, vanilla spice from the oak. Dry, balanced acidity, full body, velvety texture. Long finish with the oak notes well integrated.
That really helps visualize the differences. Any final tasting tips for someone new to Godello?
Yeah, think about temperature. Cooler, 10-12 degrees C for fresh styles. A bit warmer, 12-14 degrees C for complex oak ones. Use a decent-sized glass. Let it breathe. Maybe decant older or richer ones.
And food.
Definitely explore pairings. It's really versatile.
Okay, perfect transition. Let's talk food pairings. What works well?
It's great because it works with so much, from local Spanish dishes to international stuff, the younger, fresher styles. Brilliant with lighter seafood, like steamed mussels, grilled sole, oysters. Simple, clean flavors, also good with fresh cheeses like goat cheese.
And the richer oak-aged styles, what can they handle?
They can stand up to more robust flavors. Richer fish like roasted turbot, maybe salmon, seafood paella or rice dishes, white meats and creamy sauces, earthy mushrooms. Medium-aged cheeses work well too.
You mentioned acidity and minerality being key. How do they help with food?
The acidity is like a palate refresher. Cuts through richness, think creamy sauces or fatty fish. Makes flavors pop. The minerality. It connects beautifully with the saltiness of seafood or the earthiness of mushrooms or root vegetables.
So finding that balance is crucial. Any other tips for creating a great Godello and food moment?
Well, yeah, pay attention to the details. Get the temperature right. Use a good glass. Consider decanting if it's a complex one. Think about contrast or harmony in the pairing. Explore the regional pairings. Galicia has amazing seafood and pork dishes that evolved alongside these wines. Tell the story of the wine and just create a nice atmosphere. It all adds up.
This has been incredibly insightful. So if our listener wants to find a bottle, where should they look? Which regions, which producers are key? You mentioned DOs.
Right, the denominations of origin, the DOs, they're your guide to quality and regional style, like a seal of authenticity.
And for Godello, the most important ones are
Valdeorras DO, no question. That's ground zero for the rediscovery. Transitional climate, lots of that schist soil. Wines are often 100% Godello, typically mineral, structured.
producers to look for there.
Rafael Palacios is a big name. His Loro is widely available, as Sortes is top tier. Telmo Rodriguez makes Gabadou Zil. Godeval, especially their old vine Cepas Veas. Coroa is another reliable one. Lots of quality there.
Okay, Valdeorras is key. What about Monterey?
South of Valdeorras, bit more continental influence, mixed soils, granite, schist. Wines often feel a bit more aromatic, maybe fruitier, softer acidity sometimes. Godello might be blended, but good single varietals exist too.
Any names in Monterey?
Martin Kodak's, no more for Albarino, does a Godello called Mara Martin. That's worth trying.
And Bierzo, you mentioned that too.
Yeah, Bierzo's mainly Mencia red country, but Godello does well there. Similar climate mix, schist soils again, gives wines with good structure, balanced acidity. Tomo Rodriguez is there too, with As Caborcas.
Anywhere else?
Ribera Sacradillo, famous for heroic viticulture on steep slopes. Smaller production of Godello, but Atlantic climate, granitous soils can be really fresh and elegant.
So each DO has its own personality reflected in the grape. Are there rules within the DOs about Godello?
Yes, regulations ensure quality and typicity. Valdeorras, for instance, really focuses on 100% Godello for its whites. Monterey might allow more blending. Bierzo sees it as complementary to the reds. And the producer groups within these regions, the Consejos Reguladores, they do important work promoting Godello research, setting standards.
This has been fantastic, a real education on Godello. So for you, the listener, our learner today, what are the absolute key takeaways?
I'd say, remember Godello's incredible journey from near forgotten to star. Understand how vital terroir is, climate, soil, they shape everything. Appreciate the winemaking craft involved. Recognize its complex, evolving sensory profile. And just know it has a really exciting future.
Great summary. And that final thought, something for you to explore further.
Try this. Get a bottle of Godello from Valdeorras and one from Monterey. Taste them together. Really focus. Can you pinpoint the differences that come from their different homes? What nuances speak to you about schist versus granite or that subtle climate shift? It's a brilliant way to experience terroir firsthand.
Fantastic challenge. Thank you so much for sharing all that knowledge today. And thank you, our listener, for joining us for this deep dive into Godello. Until next time.